to the latest episode of the Pittsburgh Nerd Podcast Vlog. I'm Sean. I'm your host. Today, a little bit of housekeeping. I initially announced that we were probably going to be doing these on Saturday, Mondays, and Wednesdays. I think I'm going to change it to Saturdays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. Only because, we normally have our new episode of our podcast, the Pittsburgh Nerd Podcast, found on most podcatchers. Just give us a search, Pittsburgh Nerd. And we release that on Monday, like Sunday night for Monday. So there's a lot of promotion going on Monday for the show. And I feel like I'm overwhelming by having not only a podcast episode release, but also a vlog. So I think I'm going to stagger that and move the Monday to Tuesday, and I'm moving the Wednesday to Thursday. So I think that's just going to work out a little bit better. So on to what today's vlog is going to be all about. The Thursday vlog is really meant for me to rant, I guess. Share my thoughts on a subject. Saturday is going to be all about wrestling, mostly AEW. Monday or Tuesdays are going to be some sort of product review, and Thursdays will be my thoughts on a particular subject. And the first topic I want to cover, which is going to be surprising coming out of the gate, is going to be Star Trek. Wow, Star Trek. What the hell, Sean? And the reason I want to come out the gate with Star Trek is because Star Trek is a franchise that, while it didn't capture my imagination like Star Wars did, I still loved Star Trek. I loved watching the original series. I loved Captain Kirk. I loved Spock, McCoy. I thought the big three of the original series were really what made that show. But lately, it's undergone a renaissance, if you will, through what was originally CBS All Access and now Paramount Plus. And I feel like it's something that we need to explore a little bit. So let's start with, there have been many iterations of Star Trek over the years, going back to the 60s with the original series, as created by the great Bird, Gene Roddenberry. Then the movies, you had Star Trek the Motion Picture, most notably Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, one of the greatest science fiction epics, in my opinion, of all time. I don't think anybody can deny that. You had Star Trek III, The Search for Spock, while not living up to the expectations of Star Trek II. I still think it's a passable movie. I think Christopher Lloyd does a very good job being the villain, the crazy Klingon. I kind of like that. It's a little hokey, it's a little goofy, but it works. Star Trek IV, often heralded as the best of the movie franchise. I disagree. I don't think it's a bad movie. I know our co-host Ian really hates Star Trek IV. I don't think it's as bad as Ian thinks it is, but I just don't think it's as good, because Star Trek fans heralded that as, this is Trek. And I get that. And I the Star Wars fan in me loves the epicness of Khan, and while there was an epic feel, quote unquote, to the voyage home, I don't think it was nearly as epic. The villain was a space probe that was pissed that whales were extinct. It's kind of tough to hate that bad guy. But I get it. I get why Trek fans love it, because of how it embraces Trek philosophy. Star Trek V, The Search for God, is Ahsoka. Now, of course, I'm not going to edit that because I'm too fucking lazy. But come on, Ahsoka. Star Trek V: The Search for God. There are concepts in Star Trek V I like. I like the concept of Spock having a brother who's batshit crazy, embracing emotion, things of that nature. However, you know, the whole why does God need a starship? I mean, there's a lot. There are nuggets of good in that movie. The bad just really outweighs it. Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country, I think, is a very, very good movie. I think it's a great movie for the original cast to go out on. You know, I think General Chang is one of the better villains in Star Trek lore, played by the great Christopher Plummer, and I'm kind of him quoting the Shakespeare and everything. That's just great stuff. Then you get the handoff movie of Star Trek Generations, where we go from the original crew to the Enterprise D, the Next Generation crew. And in the middle of all that, you did have Star Trek: The Next Generation. So let's not forget about, let's go through the TV shows as well. And Star Trek: The Next Generation, I thought, for its time, and that's going to be a key word here, for its time, it is a masterpiece of a show. It gets a little cheesy at times because it's still clinging to Roddenberry's beliefs. It's still clinging to technobabble. It almost invents technobabble. But like, it seemed like every episode, like you like next week on Star Trek: The Next Generation, you see the Enterprise firing phasers, and those firing phasers at nothing. I mean, there were a few episodes that pumped up the action aspect of it, and those episodes I absolutely love. The two-parter where Picard gets captured by the Borg and becomes Locutus. I mean, that's great. I love those episodes, stuff like that. But more often than not, it was, we need to find a peaceful solution, which I get, and that's the thing. But at the same time, it wasn't as high octane as I would have liked. That leads us to Star Trek Deep Space Nine, which started off slow, but picked up speed when they get into the whole Dominion War, and really changed a lot of storytelling for Star Trek. There was an ongoing saga that was taking place in that show. It was more arc-driven than The Next Generation was, especially with the later seasons as they got more and more into the Dominion and the creators, all that stuff. So there was that show. And again, there was a lot of good in that show. I thought there was a lot of, this was after Roddenberry had died, and a lot of the rules that he had placed about the lack of conflict amongst the crew, everybody's supposed to get along. These kind of got swept aside by Ronald D. Moore and a few others who were on that writing staff, and allowed them to really create a show that actually was probably a little bit ahead of its time. I have to give Deep Space Nine its due for what it was, and I think overall, and most people agree, that's probably the best of that generation of Trek shows. And that leads us into Voyager, which kind of had in the overarching arch, they had some character development. There was the conflict because, some of them were rebels and some of them were Starfleet, and so there was some conflict. But at the end of the day, they all kind of learned how to get along, begrudgingly. So it wasn't like it was a perfect union, but at the same time, there was a lot more respect because they're all trying to get home. We can at least come together for, no matter what our philosophical differences about what's taking place in the Alpha Quadrant, we need to get back there. And I thought the captain of Catherine Janeway, the first female captain, um, she has some big shoes to fill. I thought she did a very good job of doing that, and it was one of those situations where she took the ball and she ran with it, and she ran with it very well. It's a very good show, no doubt about it. But it's to me it falls away from what Deep Space Nine was, and that leads us to Enterprise, which I think again was kind of it's a better show than people give it credit for. I just rewatched it not too long ago, and I think it's better than what people give it credit for. It tried to have those ongoing story arcs that it was tied. It had its hands tied by history, essentially. They were clinging very much to the mythos that had already been written, and they had a very hard time kind of overcoming that. In the meantime, you go back to the movies, you have Star Trek First Contact, which is the best of the Next Generation movies, and probably this, in my opinion, the second best Star Trek movie. This is the Borg going back in time to try to stop Earth from making first contact with the Vulcans. It's because the Borg recognize Earth as their biggest problem, and it's a really well done movie. Again, it has a lot of tension to it. It has a lot of suspense to it. It has humor. It has the little things that make Star Trek great, but at the same time, the conflict within Jean-Luc Picard about the Borg, and how awful they are, and because they've been in his head, he's been in their head. I mean, it's a masterpiece as far as character-driven story with one or two characters. The Borg Queen in that one is a fantastic character as well, and her seduction of not only Picard but also Data is really a fascinating watch. So that's probably the best of them. I mean, the last two, there was Insurrection, which was the people on the planet that could stay young, and the people who had left the planet wanted to take the magic. I can't even remember what the hell that was. That was awful. And the one that had Tom Hardy as a young Picard, the Picard clone. It's just a bad movie. I'm sorry. And it was at this point that Star Trek kind of had the door slammed on it. And the movies were making money, but they weren't making big money. They had a reliable fan base. But so does Kevin Smith. I love Kevin Smith movies. I'll go see a Kevin Smith movie, but he's not making a ton of money. He's got his reliable fan base. If he makes a movie for about $15 million, this movie's going to make about $30 million, and he gets his money back and then some. So, I mean, it's one of those deals where the movies made money, but they weren't the major blockbusters that Paramount was hoping for. So the franchise got shuttered for a number of years. And then they start looking around and thinking about, let's reboot the franchise. And they bring in J.J. Abrams, and they do a complete reboot. And now this is where things become interesting. Because Star Trek has a very loyal fan base. One of the most loyal fan bases in all of fandom. But man, they don't like it when you mess with their stuff. Don't mess with their toys. And when J.J. Abrams released the Star Trek reboot, people were split in the Star Trek community. Now, I will tell you, I loved the Star Trek reboots. I loved all three of them. I think all three of them. What Star Trek Into Darkness isn't that good. I have problems with it, but overall, I like the movie. Okay, so that's where I'm at with these. But the problem is, these movies aren't, as some will tell you, they're not Star Trek movies. They're action-adventure movies. Star Trek fans hate that Star Trek becomes action-adventure. I don't know why, but they do. So here we are with this really good movie that they're releasing, and Star Trek fans are vehemently split on this. Very upset that how this is playing out. And like, I get it, and I don't get it. Because that split continues. So now Paramount, CBS, they have an option to do TV. They create Star Trek Discovery. I think Discovery is a phenomenal show. There are Star Trek fans that will deny that. They are denying that show exists. It's amazing to me. And that there are others. Picard, a little bit more receptive to that one that Star Trek fans were, but still, there's a lot of split because again, come on, Sabine. There's a lot of action adventure in that. There's it's not what Roddenberry would have wanted. And then Star Trek Lower Decks, I think, is a very good. I think Star Trek Lower Decks does a great job of poking fun at Star Trek while at the same time absolutely respecting what Star Trek is. So, I hate seeing a fandom split like this, because to me, right now, this is a heyday for Star Trek fans. This should be your time to shine. And instead, there are many who just completely disavow that Discovery even exists. I don't know. I've never caught a feel of how they feel about Lower Decks. They probably don't like it because it makes fun of Star Trek. But like I said, at the same time, it does a phenomenal job of paying respect to Star Trek. And Picard seemed to split fans because he wasn't the captain. He wasn't the guy on the bridge of the Enterprise. He was a different character. He was an older character. He was a changed character in a number of ways. And I wish I had, as a Star Wars fan, I know the venom that's in the Star Wars fandom. And we're going to talk about that. Don't get me wrong, we're going to talk about that. But I find the venom in the Star Trek community interesting because what Star Trek has done, in my opinion, is done a great job in the past 8 or 9 years of bringing in new fans, making the franchise fun while still clinging to its roots, particularly with something like Discovery. I think Discovery does a good job of kind of towing that line. I know others will disagree with me, but at the end of the day, I feel like this should be a time for Star Trek fans to welcome new fans with open arms, and instead, that original base, that core base that was going to see the movies, is very split on how they feel about what they love the most going forward. And that makes me sad because this should be their time to shine. So that's my rant. My rant is essentially, this is what my thoughts on Star Trek. I love Star Trek. I think, you know, even the stuff that like the Next Generation, I still love it. You know, there are some parts that I love more, a whole lot more than others, but you know, overall, I think this is a franchise that's always been important to me as a fan of science fiction and fantasy. And you know, I've read, you know, the Star Trek novels. I've watched a cartoon. I remember, I remember going to see the first movie with my grandfather. You know, so it was one of those things. Like I've always liked Star Trek. Again, it's not home base for me, but it's something that I do love, and I feel like there are other people now that are really giving it an opportunity, and those people are not being welcomed with open arms by the fan base because they're not real fans. They're embracing the new stuff. They like this new stuff that we don't like, and I hope someday we can all come together as fans and just enjoy it for what it is. So there you go. That's my nerd rant for this week. I'm Sean, and remember, I'm a co-host of the Pittsburgh Nerd Podcast. You can find us on most podcatchers. We're very, very easy to find. Just search Pittsburgh Nerd. Also, of course, we're going to be releasing, about 3 blogs a week here. Vlog, vlog, if you will. And we're going to be doing that two or three times a week, and having fun with that as well. So, expanding the brand, as I've been saying, and I hope you're enjoying the ride. And we will see you soon.